Sorry. I think this will be a good segue, or at least not a segue, excuse me. What's the right word? It'll be very apropos for what's going on in the world around us today. The question that we're looking at and we're seeing is Korach, right? Anybody know anything about Korach?
Well,
he was not he's not looked upon very favorably by our tradition, right? We're not big fans of him. But the question is, what did he do that was so bad, right? What did he do? And I mean, remember we've said that there's these escalating rebellions that have been happening the last several weeks, right? There's been the first one where the Israelites are grumbling, they don't have enough meat. There's Moses is rebelled against by his own brother and sister when they gossip about his wife. We had the rebellion of the spies that was looked at, and it keeps escalating. And now we have the rebellion of a whole bunch of people against Moses, directly against his authority. So, oops, that's not what I meant to do. So let's open the text and see what we have here. All right. So we have.
Is it against Moses or against Moses and Aaron?
Excuse me. Excellent point. It's against Moses and Aaron. Okay. It's against Moses and Aaron. So let's look here by Kach Korach. And Korach took, he took these people, and what did they do? We're going to come back to this verse in a second. But to rise up against Moses together with 250 Israelites, chieftains, the community chosen in the assembly, men of repute. Right? It's not just like the crazy rabble or whatever. These are the leaders. These are very, very influential people who are coming to say to Moses, hey, so what are they going to say? They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, Rav lachem, you have gone too far. For all the community are holy, all of them, and the Lord is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation? Okay, so let's start to dissect. There's a couple different questions here, okay? So first of all, I want to look at a definition, okay? And that is a demagogue. Like, we hear that word being thrown around quite a bit, okay? Quite a bit. And again, thank you to Dr. Google. I believe this one was from Merriam-Webster. Definition of a demagogue: a political leader who seeks support by appealing to the desires and prejudices of ordinary people rather than by using rational arguments. Okay? Can you, so in your own words, this is, sorry, not in your own words, in my own words, this is someone who doesn't use a logical argument, doesn't use rational arguments, inflames the passions of the people, twists the words, gives inaccurate or completely false emotional appeals rather than facts. Okay? Not making any comments as of yet of who I'm talking about, but draw your own conclusions. Okay? So we have here Vayikach Korach. Now I love this portion because a part of I heard this was my sister's bat mitzvah portion, and I remember her this line repeating it over and over the whole year because it was the first one that she learned. Vayikach Korach. And it's like, it's still, even today, resonates in my head.
Earworm.
And I hear this, and I'm studying this, and I'm like, oh, not that. And it actually happens to be her birthday today. So when we're done here, it might be early enough or late enough that I can call her to wish her happy birthday on her birthday. But be that as it may, Vayikach Korach. Okay? Now, the English translation takes, Vayikach means to take, but the English translation puts the ending here, okay? And by the way, this part here, took men, that is, that doesn't anywhere appear here. So, Vayikach Korach, Korach took, Ben Yitzhar, he was the son of Yitzhar, Ben Kahat, who is the son of Kahat, the son of Levi, okay? And Datan and Aviran, these two guys who were the Bnei Eliav, the On ben Pelet, this other guy, On ben Pelet, and they're the sons of Reuben, okay? Now, where does it say took men in the Hebrew? It does not say.
No.
It doesn't say that anywhere. That is an inference. Okay, so the question is, what did Korach take? What did he take? All right. So there's a couple different explanations here, and it's not clear. So one of them, we look first at Rashi. Right? He took himself from one side with the view of separating himself from out of the community. Right? To be separate from the community. So you might raise a protest regarding the priesthood to which Moses had appointed his brother. Okay, and he looks here, Onkelos. If you don't know who Onkelos is, it's one of the earliest, or actually I think it's one of the first translations of the Bible, and it was translated into Aramaic. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and so a lot of times when the commentators are trying to figure out what does a word mean, and if it's not entirely clear, they'll look to Onkelos and the Aramaic, because Aramaic was a lingua franca of Jews. Okay, not Hebrew. It was Aramaic. So if you don't know a word, but you see that it's translated to something else, well, okay, that must be what that word means. Okay. Onkelos, he writes for it paleg, which means that he separated himself from the rest of the community in order to maintain his dissension, right? Which is putting in that they're totally emphasizing that he was not looking to have any kind of resolution. He was dafka trying to have an argument no matter what. Okay, no matter what, he was trying to have an argument. And you can see here, and he's looking at from Job. Why does your heart take thee aside? When he's talking to one of the people who are coming to console him, that one of the guys makes himself totally separate and doesn't want to be reconciled. He just wants to dafka. I mean, and I'm sure some of you have been in that kind of feeling before, where all you want is to have an argument with someone, right? I see my boys do that all the time. It's good fun for the first few minutes watching them, the 5 and the 4-year-old. And then after a little bit escalates very quickly. But it's just like they're not even interested in a resolution. They just want to argue with one another. Okay. And this is what, and so, I mean, and by the way, these are the commentators trying to ascertain what did Korach do that was so bad? Because if we look at his as his initial argument, it doesn't seem that he's so far off base, right? Let's look again at what his initial plea was. His plea was, you have gone too far. For all the community are holy, all of them, and the Lord is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation, right? So in and of itself, taken completely out of context, that seems a fairly legitimate complaint, right? Moses, you're not delegating. We're Levies. Why aren't you, share the load? We want to have that connection, that closeness with God itself. And it shouldn't just be left for you and Aaron. And by the way, the implication of Aaron and being lumped in there is that it's nepotism, right? Cronyism. We want to be involved in this, and we're not, because remember, this is a very clannish society. So you're cutting me out of the work. So it doesn't seem so far-fetched that what Aaron is what Korach is suggesting is awful and terrible, right? Doesn't seem so bad. So the rabbis are trying, because we know what happens to Korach, by the way. I mean, spoiler alert, it doesn't end well for him, right? They get swallowed up by the earth. So there's clearly they're trying to okay, so they're looking and teasing into seeing. So here he's saying, why was he so bad? Because he separated himself. Val, is that a question?
Yes. Did he influence the 250 chieftains?
We're going to come to
was
that.
he kind of representing?
We will come to that. We will come to this. Okay. Then Rashi has another explanation, meaning why he separated. Okay, another explanation by Korach. He won over, right, by Mashach Rashei Sanhedrot Shebahem Bidvarim, right? That he won over the chiefs of the Sanhedrin amongst them. And this is an anachronistic comment. The Sanhedrin did not exist until thousands of years later, or hundreds of years later, depending whatever. But still, and I think what he means here, the Sanhedrin, was the heads of these very influential people. And how did he do it? By fine words. And fine words here is a euphemism. It doesn't mean nice words. It uses here in the figurative sense, just as in these different places that he's using not nice words. He's misleading the people. Okay, so that's Rashi's understanding of what he meant there. Okay, so the first one, he removed himself from the community. He took himself to one side with the idea to continue the argument. And he also, or it could be also, he took them, he influenced them. Or I should say, probably more accurately would be, he manipulated them.
Yes.
With words. Okay, would be probably a better translation there. Okay.
Isn't it a variation on last week's theme, the calumny and lashon?
Oh yes, calumny. I've been practicing that word, by the way. Yes. So in this case, now that it's that manipulation is being directed. Now it's directly, without a hint, at Moses. Before it was sort of subtle. Now there's no distinction. There's no subtlety whatsoever. It's directed at Moses. Okay. By the way, the new people here, if anytime you have a question, please interrupt, because what we do is we go from step to step, building on different themes. So if there's something that I've covered that you don't understand, please pause me and ask a question to clarify. Okay, that's what we're here for, to talk and engage. And if I'm the only one talking the whole time, something's gone horribly wrong. Okay, its idea is discussion, it's sharing, and conversating with one another. Okay. You're very welcome, Meira. So, Rashbam, by the way, is Rashi's grandson-in-law. I think it's his grandson-in-law. And he says, Vaikach Korach, he means in the same way that Avraham took Sarah Ishto Lot, right? I think it's chapter 14 or whatever it is. When we first introduced to them, God tells them, Lech Lecha, go to the place where I'm going to show you. Abraham says, okay, cool. And it says, Vaikach Avram et Sarah Ishto et Lot, Afkan Vaikach Korach. In the same way, he approached them and said, hey, we need to go and do this. Okay? And he took them with him after explaining to them what he wanted to do. But there it's in a positive sense. Here it's in a negative sense. Now, there's a little bit of diversion here because we're going to try and tease out the motivations of Korach, because the Bible here, the Torah, is very, very light, right? Very, very light on details. Okay, on the motivation, what exactly he did. So, and also when this happens. Okay, so there's two different opinions that we're going to look at about when this happened. Now, this is sort of important because it could describe slightly different motivations to Korach when he does this. Okay. And they try and by doing that, the different commentators will give the different motivations. Okay, so first is Ibn Ezra. Okay, Ibn Ezra. He says, "Zeh hadavar haya b'midbar Sinai kasher nitchalfu habechorim v'nivdalu halviim." This incident he's talking about took place in the wilderness of Sinai, right? When the Levites were set apart from God's service, replacing the firstborn. What's he talking about?
When the Mishkan was dedicated.
This is before that.
Before.
This was at the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, right? This is when, right? Yeah, bad. So, which means this is totally out of sync of what's going on here. Because we're looking in the narrative, this is 2 years after that. But Ibn Ezra, he's saying, no, this is, and this is when it happens, okay? The Israelites thought that our Lord, Moses, had done this on his own in order to bestow high standing upon his brother, okay? Right. So the Israelites would have thought that Moses was saying, hey, I want my brother, I'm keeping it in the family, and I'm going to make not all of the Levites, but only the line of, and not even all of this line. It's in essence, it's establishing a new clan within the clan, right? He's saying Aaron is going to be the one. So in order to be spoke, so the other Kohathites, his relatives, and the Levites as a whole, his clan. Okay. But the other Levites conspired against him because they had been assigned to Aaron and to his sons. Datan and Avi, right? So meaning that the other Levites who joined with the rebellion because they weren't able to do some of the holy work, or not as holy as Aaron and his sons were doing. They're saying, hey, we're part of that same subclan, the Kohathites. Why are you getting to do this extra cool stuff? We want to do it too, right? So, okay, fine. So that explains Korach and that side of the argument. But the Bible, remember, makes a point to emphasize that the Datan and Aviram and the 250 people of the tribe of Reuben were part of this as well. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, Datan and Aviram got involved in the conspiracy because Moses had removed their firstborn status of their tribe Reuben and given it to Joseph. Joseph? What are we talking about here? Right? Mm-hmm. What are we talking about? Moses didn't do that, right? They may have suspected he did this because his attendant Joshua, who later takes over from Moses, was from the tribe of Ephraim. Now remember, Ephraim and Manasseh became two separate tribes. Joseph doesn't have his own tribe. His two sons become, because remember, just before Jacob passes away, Joseph brings his two sons, and Jacob, in essence, adopts them. And they get elevated to sons of Jacob, not grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, and by the way, this happens, and it's not clear in the Bible what is this after the fact explanation, but because Reuben not only in the narrative loses his firstborn standing, Judah really takes that over. But here, right, Judah is the one who convinces Pharaoh, and Judah is the one who is the last tribe standing, in essence, after the destruction and invasion in 711 and 586. And so, is it before or after the fact? It's not really clear. But you have here, so Datan and Aviram, they get involved because they feel they've been wrong, because they should have been the ones taking over, having the leadership. Okay, fine. Korach was a firstborn himself, right? The sons of Izhar, who was a firstborn, right? Their father Izhar was Korach, Nepheg, and Zichri. This is when it goes to the lineage of the tribe of Levi in chapter 6 of Exodus, in that little interlude between the introduction of Moses and then the start of the 10 plagues. So we know that Korach is a firstborn. Okay, and remember that. Okay, now and then he's going to go a little bit further. Remember, so another reason why these two guys were put together, the Korach and Reuben. Remember that Reuben camped on the south, and Korach, being a Kohathite, was among the Levites who camped south of the tabernacle, right? So they were spending a lot of time together, rabble-rousing, and this is where the gossiping and the schmoozing, right? See, when you schmooze, nothing comes positive from that, right? And so the implication is they joined together because they were camped together and they both felt aggrieved. Right? Korach wasn't able to take some of the holy work in the midst of the tabernacle. Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, lost their firstborn status. Okay? The chieftains of the community, that's that last group, were all the firstborn, so they would have been presenting the offerings up until now. That is why they were willing to take the fire pans when Moses suggested it, right? The proof of this explanation is the miracle of the staffs, which comes later, but the idea is originally, and in most places, up until that point, the firstborn would have been the ones who would have been, in essence, conscripted to serve in the temple, in the tabernacle, right? And we still, today, there's a vestige of that. Anybody know what a pidyon haben is?
Birth of the first son.
Not the birth, it's the redemption of the first one, right?
After the birth. I meant after the birth.
Exactly right. And it comes from a time because you wouldn't need to send your firstborn because the Levites had taken that honor. But in essence, it means that the Levite is serving on your behalf, or on behalf of the firstborn. And so there's a ceremony that we still do from time to time. Some people still do it. The firstborn son, about 30 days after they're born, a priest, a Kohen, will come and you pay him, I forgot how much it is, some silver coins, right, to redeem him. So in essence, you're paying the priest for serving in place of your son. Okay, and it's a way it had been a way for the priest to earn a little bit of currency, a little bit of money. So this is Ibn Ezra's thing. He's saying these guys rose up, not in the sequence of things that are happening now, but this is still in the desert of Sinai, when the firstborns were replaced by the Kohanim, by the Levites. And so the tribe of Reuben is upset, and also because they see the tribe of Levi sees that Aaron has been picked, or they think that Moses has picked him, not knowing that God has picked him. Okay, so that's Ibn Ezra's understanding, and that's the motivation ascribed to Korach. Okay, that's Ibn Ezra. Ramban, and I mean this is a really, really long one, but it's interesting to see parts of it. I've highlighted some here. And I've read, right, Ve'amar Rabbi Abraham, Kizeh Davar Haya B'Midbar Sinai. All right, so what he's doing is he's just quoting Ramban Nachmanides. He lives about 100 and some odd years, I think, after Ibn Ezra, and he frequently will disagree with him, okay? And so he's just reiterating what he said, that this is why they're upset. This follows Ibn Ezra's opinion, by the way, which he often repeats. The Torah, and where that line here is, I should have highlighted it, sorry. Ein mukdam u'char b'Torah. Okay? Ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah. This is an axiom that a lot of commentators understand. There is no, the Torah, and it means ein mukdam, there is no before and there is no after in the Torah, which means the Torah is not written in chronological order. Okay? And that, by the way, is the mainstream opinion of most commentators, that it's not necessarily written in the order that you read it, is not necessarily the order that it happened. Okay? But, however, and this is where I find this, ein mukdam u'char b'Torah, he thinks he can apply this principle whenever he wants, right? This is a way for the commentator to kind of backhand the other commentator, meaning he's wrong. I'm going to try and be polite about it, but I'm letting you know that I think he's full of it, right? Because he's saying it in a somewhat nice way, but if you can read between the lines, he's not being very nice, right? He's saying this guy is full of it. He's not being consistent, right? Now he's going to go into his argument. This is Ramban, not Rambam, but Nachmanides, okay? All right, but as I've said in these four places, in my opinion, the Torah is indeed perfectly chronological, except when it explicitly indicates that a particular incident took place at an earlier or later time, okay? Now, so he's saying then, that no, this rebellion is perfectly, and we're getting to that crescendo of the different rebellions happening, and this happened here precisely because of that. Why? Okay, so in fact, this incident took place in the wilderness of Paran, which we're talking about here, at Kadesh Barnea, after the incident with the spies, right? So immediately after the spies happen, this is happening, okay? What is correct about Ibn Ezra's interpretation is that Korach was upset. As the sages tell us, that Elisaphan was given the leadership of that clan within the tribe of Levi, and that he was jealous of Aaron's priesthood, right? Okay, so that point they don't disagree on. After all, he says explicitly in verse 10 that Datan and Aviran got involved with him not because of Reuben's losing firstborn status. It was Jacob himself who took this from Reuben and gave it to Joseph, but for a reason they express plainly in verses 13 and 14, right? And what was it in verse 13 and 14, right? They said, it is not enough that you have brought us from the land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness, that you would also lord it over us? Even if you had brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey and given us possession of fields and vineyards, should you gouge out those men's eyes, we will not come, right? This is Datan and Aviran. Moses is saying like, hey, okay, let's talk, right? Let's talk. And they're saying, no, right? You brought us out here to die, and no, we're not coming to talk to you. We're not going to engage with you. So that's why he's saying, Ramban is saying, no, it has nothing to do with them losing the firstborn status. That's been something they've been living with for 400 or 500 years at this point. Okay? Jacob himself did that between Reuben and Judah. We're not upset about that. We've accepted that. We moved on with our lot in life. We are upset, however, that you brought us out here to the wilderness, and we're going to die here. Okay? Remember, this is right after the spies last week, okay? And where they've been sentenced to die. the ones who left Egypt, that generation, except for Caleb and Joshua, everybody else is not going to make it into the land of Israel. So understandably, they are not so wild about that idea. Okay. No such evil as this took. Oops, what just happened there? There we go. No such evil as this took place while Israel was at Sinai. Okay? He's being very clear. This did not happen at Sinai. This happened 2 years later in the story. I was reading it now. In fact, even in the famous golden calf incident, very few people died, which, he's true. Not that many people died. Only about 3,000 or 4,000. Not that many. I'm being sarcastic there. I mean, he's like, what? Right? Very few people. They were saved by Moses, spending 40 days and 40 nights in prayer for them. For that very reason, they loved him as they loved their own lives, and they obeyed him. Okay? If someone had rebelled against Moses back then, the people would have stoned him. Okay? Right? You remember the story that the golden calf, Moses goes up, and he's been up for 40 days. He then comes down, sees the riffraff doing whatever it is they're doing. Moses, he smashes the things. He tells the Levites, put a sword on your thigh, go out and kill a bunch of people. And then he kills the ringleaders. Then he goes up and spends another 40 days and 40 nights up with God, begging God for forgiveness not to destroy the Israelites. He comes down, God has forgiven you. He goes back up for another 40 days and 40 nights and gets the second set of tablets. Okay? So people had seen that he'd done that. And they knew that Moses had interceded with God directly on their behalf. Therefore, if someone, Elu haya adam mored ala Moshe bizman hahu, haya ha'am skolim oto. If someone had rebelled against Moses back then, at that moment, they would have stoned him. So he's proving this could not have happened at Sinai, right? As Ibn Ezra is saying, it definitely didn't happen then because the people were so enamored with Moses that he's just saved their life. Why would they rebel against Moses at a time like that? Doesn't make sense, right? And here he's saying, you understand, right? Makes sense? His logical reason. Okay, so that is precisely why Korach put up with Aaron being given high rank and why the firstborn put up with losing their own positions to the Levites. But once they got to the wilderness of Paran with the fire of Tabereh, which was last week, and the many who died in Kibrot Hata'ava, which again was also last week, and most importantly, Moses' subsequent failure to pray for them after the sin of the spies, so that the chieftains died of plague and the decree that they would all perish in the wilderness was not rescinded. Remember, Moses did not go up to the mountain to talk to God this time. He just said, okay, this is happening, deal with it. Okay? Then they became desperate enough to think that all the bad things that had happened to them were Moses' doing. Okay? As any good demagogue, any good poet, he seizes his moment. He knew at the moment at Sinai, Moses had the goodwill of the people. Now, with all these things that have been challenging and coming up against Moses, not going to happen. That is when Korach found his opportunity to quarrel with Moses. And that explains the argument, even our children will not get out of this wilderness and will not possess the land that you promised them, which they had just said, right? That's in this week. That's what they're saying, okay? The bottom line is that this incident took place exactly when it was written in the Torah, immediately after the incident with the spies. It is certainly plausible that those involved in the dispute were firstborns upset about losing the priesthood. This would explain why Moses told them to take fire pans, just as they used to do, to see which group the Lord had really chosen. Why didn't Meira? It doesn't really say why Moses didn't. Although we mentioned this, I believe, a little bit last week, and you're starting to see Moses getting very exasperated. He's very frustrated, right? And we're going to see that. I think it's next week. It could be next week. Yeah, when Moses actually loses it completely and hits the rock. Okay, and in a way you can kind of understand that. You can kind of understand that, but there's no explicit explanation of why he does that. Are they actually upset at the risk of dying, or is it just a feeling of slighted losing their status? I think it's that they're upset about Moses didn't intercede on their behalf to try and get them into the land of Israel. And so they're losing, they've left Egypt, but they're not getting to go into the promised land. That's not up to them. That's their descendants will get that. And partly it's the way they're reacting is, sort of like, yes, thank you for proving my point, sort of thing, right? That they did not deserve it. Okay, so now we have an understanding, at least two different opinions of what the motivation, first of all, when it happened and what the motivation, what exactly it is that they were arguing against. And Nachmanides is really, really driving home the point that Korach is a master manipulator, right? He picks the right moment, okay? He picks the right moment. And so there's a really, again, a little bit of a long midrash, but it's important, it's informative about how we understand how Korach did this, how he manipulated the people, okay? And it's based, the rabbis are looking at this line, the first psalm, the first verse of the first psalm, right? Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach be'etzet rashaim. Happy is the man who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of the sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Okay? Happy. So the people who do that, such as Korach's followers, again, didn't end well for them. So there's a long midrash here, okay? In the company of the insolent. This is, okay, Elu banav shel Korach. This refers to Korach and his sons who made scorn of Moses and Aaron. Okay, so what did Korach do? Okay, we know what happened, but we don't know exactly how now we're going back to Vaikach Korach with those manipulative words. How exactly did he do that? What were those manipulative words? And now we're going to see the blueprint according to the Midrash. Again, this is going back almost 2,000 years, the Midrash, that when it was put together, how Korach actually manipulated the people. Okay, remember, going back here, the definition, he's appealing to the desires and prejudices of ordinary people. He's not using a rational argument. Okay, so let's see what he does. Okay, what did Korach do? He assembled all the congregation, as it says, and Korach gathered all the congregation against them. Right, says that's what he did. Okay, so what did he do? He began to speak to them words of scorn, saying, There was once a widow in my neighborhood who had two fatherless daughters and one field. So right away, we know we're tugging at the heartstrings, right? Not only is there a widow, right? Not only is there a widow, she has two daughters who, and it now appears that this widow not only a widow once, but twice. Both of her husbands have passed away, and she has daughters. And so that means, by the way, and one field. So she can't even pass along the inheritance to the daughters because they're daughters. They're not going to get the land. And even if they could, there's only one. So one daughter, if she could pass it on, one daughter will maybe get the field, maybe not, but the other daughter is going to get garnished. Nothing. Mm-hmm. So already he's setting up this terrible plight. Oh, look at this poor person. Look what's about to happen. All right, you can see it coming. Okay? He's already manipulating. He's pulling at the heartstrings immediately. All right? When she came to plow, Moses said to her, You shall not plow with an ox and an ass together. All right? He's telling her, like, hey, right? When she came to sow, he said to her, You shall not sow your field with two kinds of seeds, right? And he's quoting directly because this is what it says in the Torah, right? Of course, they're going to make sure that we look at this ridiculous bureaucratic nonsense that we're imposing on this poor person who's just trying to sow and grow, land and support her family. When she came to reap and stack corn, he said to her, Moses, leave gleanings, the forgotten sheaf, and the corner of the field for the poor, right? Technically, yes, that is what the law says. But you're not seeing the whole context here, because the whole context is if you're poor, you don't need to do that. Right? Okay. So when she came to thresh, he said to her, Give tithes, priestly dues, the first and the second tithes. Right? Meaning she's harvested whatever she's going to harvest. You have to give a portion of that to the priests because they don't own land. So it's becoming, you can see all the red tape here. All the pressure that she's going to be under. So she justified Hebron's pronouncement and gave him. Okay, what did this poor woman do? She went and sold her fields and purchased with the proceeds 2 lambs to clothe herself from its shearings. from its shearing and enjoy its products. Right? I don't want to deal with this the crazy bureaucracy of trying to have land. I'm just going to have some lambs, and that will provide for me and my daughters. Okay, great. As soon as they gave birth, right, the lambs, they grew up. Aaron came to her and said to her, "Give me the firstborn, since the Holy One, blessed be He, has said, every firstborn that shall be born of your herd and flock, the male one shall be consecrated to the Lord your God." Right? Bikurim, first fruits. It's not, by the way, it's not just fruit. It's also the first animal. Okay? Doesn't belong to you. So I know you're very poor. Sorry. So sorry. Not sorry. Give me that firstborn. It belongs to me, not you. Okay? You see what he's doing. He's taken the technical meaning of the letter of the law and twisting it. Okay? She justified heaven's pronouncement and gave him the offspring. The time came for shearing, and she sheared them. Great, I can now make a nice woolen whatever for my daughters. Came Aaron and said to her, you see where this is going. Give me the first of the shearing, since the Holy Blessed One, blessed be He, said, the first of your grain, your wine, and your oil, and the first of the shearing of your flock shall give to him, to God. Okay? Great. So now she's losing the shearing also. Thereupon she said, since I have no more strength to withstand this man, I shall slaughter and eat them. Right? At least I can enjoy my lamb chops. Okay? This is getting ridiculous. I don't want to have to deal with it. I'm just going to kill him and eat my lamb chop, and then I'll be happy. As soon as she had slaughtered them, again, Aaron came to her. We see where this is going. Give me the shoulder, 2 cheeks, and the maw. Again, for the same reason, tithe to the priest. Whereupon she said, even after I have slaughtered them, I am not delivered from his hand. Let them be prescribed, cherem, for my use. Okay, meaning no one gets to use them. They're prescribed, no one gets it. Said Aaron to her, aha, in that case, it's all mine, since the Holy One said, everything that has been prescribed in Israel shall be yours, meaning the priest. He took them, departed, and left her weeping with her 2 daughters. Such was the lot that befell this unfortunate woman. So much do they do in the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. Right? So much do they do. Now, you see what in the opinion of the Midrash, you see what Korach is doing. He's selectively quoted and manipulated what the story actually is doing. But what is not there? Right? What's not there? Is there any constructive criticism of the laws itself? No. He's telling a nice story, maybe fearful. Like, look at the excesses of these people, right? He also he doesn't. What else is not there? Who's the name of this person? I know a guy. So people have told me, right? We've heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? That's not there, right? That's not there. He's also, he's casting aspersions on the motivations of Moses and Aaron, okay? Just like any good demagogue, okay? So again, there's no constructive criticism. It's an implication like, look how bad that is. I will fix the problem. But he's not saying how, right? Number 2, there's no authenticity. He's not authenticating who this person actually is. And number 3, all he's doing is telling the story to cast aspersions on Moses and Aaron, the ones who he's trying to usurp and replace. Okay? According to this Midrash, textbook demagoguery, textbook. Okay? Now, just so we understand, these are some of the verses that are relevant that you will notice that Korach never mentioned, right? Lo tateh mishpat ger yatam velo tachbol beged almana. You shall not subvert the rights of the stranger or the fatherless. You shall not take a widow's garment in pawn. In Exodus, kol almana veyatam lo ta'anun. You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. That conveniently was not mentioned by Korach. That's interesting. Deuteronomy. Ki titzkor kitzircha basadecha. Right? When you reap the harvest in your field and overlook a sheaf in the field, do not turn back to get it. It shall go to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, in order that the Lord your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat down the fruit of your olive trees, you do not go over them again. That shall go to the stranger, the father, and the widow. Now, according to this, who's supposed to get the stuff that Aaron was taking from her, or Moses told her to leave? She should get them because she's a widow. Her two daughters are fatherless, so it would go to her. It would stay with them, right?
Yeah.
Conveniently not mentioned, right? And Mary, right? He cherry-picked the laws for his story. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly the point. Meir, what did you write? It's all hypothetical. No chance for real evidence and no concession for Moses and Aaron's empathy in a real situation. Of course, that's exactly the point, because it's not a real story. As any good demagogue will tell you, they will inflame your passions. They will twist them, distort them, manipulate, and they're not going to give you actual facts, right? Don't confuse me with the facts. This is all about trying to stir up the passions. There's no constructive offering, right? The only thing that he's offering is, I can do it better. I can do it better. Only I can solve the problem. Where have we heard this before? Right? I am your savior. Those other guys, and here's stories about what they did that was wrong. And I'm going to give you a very narrow, very focused, very distorted retelling of something that has happened. Okay? And so if that's the case, right, then we see very clearly how Korach is able to do that. And that's why they are so very not nice propaganda for tyrants. Yeah, exactly. It's a how-to book. Well, hopefully not, because what happens to them? Because what's the response that has to happen? You have to stand up to them. Right. Yeah, they've been around for ages. Exactly. I mean, there's also racism, discrimination. That's also the playbook is in the Bible as well. That's a story for another time. But right, so this is and his point is, so much do they do, right? So much do they do in favor of where was that? So much do they do in favor, right? So much do they do in the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. Okay, and it's casting aspersions, personally attacking them at this point now, right? So much do they do. Okay, and I mean, he's trying to say it's not the Torah that I'm not, and he's trying to split hairs here. He's not saying that the Torah is wrong. He's saying that the administrators, the ones who are doing it, are the ones to blame. They are the administration of the law. But it's still casting aspersions and directly attacking them as well, okay? And so now you understand what Rashi was talking about, right? Up here, that comment, shebahem bidvarim, right? With fine words, right? He was manipulating them, right? And this is where he's quoting from. I know it's a longer midrash, but it's important to read through the whole thing to understand where the rabbis were really getting their sense of, this is why we don't like Korach. This is why that they were, and it's also trying to get you to understand further, how is it that he was able to manipulate these people? These people who had, by the way, what had they gone through already? The miracle of the 10 plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea, the miracle at Mount Sinai, manna, how could these people have been misled? How could they have been misled? Right? Put another way, how could the country of Freud and Beethoven produce the Nazis? How could that happen? Right? How could that happen? Well, like this. Any gifted demagogue, any gifted orator, any gifted tyrant, right? This is how they do it. This is how they do it, right? And you can easily distract them. And that's why, and it says also, right? And that's why I think Ramban's, Nachmanides, his point, he picked his moment. That is when Korach found his opportunity to quarrel with Moses. for him, it wasn't so important what the quarrel was, is what Ramban seems to be indicating. It's that he picked his moment, he found an opening, and boom, now I'm going to go. This is how it's going to be. Okay. I think there was another comment there. His sarcasm and scorn are totally destructive, right? Leaving those who listen full of bitterness. Exactly. It's a disease that breaks apart faith and hope. That's exactly what tyrants are hoping for. Demagogues are hoping for. They are not looking to inspire you, right? They're not looking to tell you better things are coming. They're telling you what's wrong and who's to blame for it. That's also a hallmark of how you're able to see the difference between the two, okay? So I just wanted to finish with this quote from Psalms. Again, another one, right? Pikudei Adonai yesharim mesamachei lev. The precepts of the Lord are just, rejoicing the heart. The instruction of the Lord is lucid, making the eyes light up. Right? But, right, the opposite of that is people, their insides can be crooked, and if there's no light, then you're going to be governed by our baser passions. We are easily led astray. We've seen that in human history. I don't even know how many times. I can't even tell you how many times we've been led astray. Because if we're not willing to open our eyes, if we're not willing to think critically, if we're not willing to actually push back on our leaders instead of being swayed by our emotions, these sorts of things are going to happen. And listen, in Korach's case, it wasn't so terrible because only 250 people died, right? But when you are able to manipulate to such a large extent so many people, the consequences can very well be disastrous. And we've seen that in human history so many times. People are easily led astray. People are easily deceived. People are easily manipulated. And it's not just the foolhardy or the simpletons or the non-intelligent, right? Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. Any questions? Oh, I finished a little bit early. I do apologize. That went a little bit faster than I thought. But any questions? So I think the larger motive and the larger lesson to learn from this is Korach, I think, is a cautionary tale. In a way, not necessarily a straw man, but like an overly exaggerated, but not necessarily overly exaggerated. I don't think that's right, but like a model, a theme of that demagogue, that person who is rising up, not with any constructive criticism, but simply by manipulating the people. Mira, how is Korach's attack overturned? Well, Moses says, okay, you want to have some of the power? No problem. You guys arrange tomorrow morning. You want to be priests as well? I'll arrange my Aaron and his sons. They'll come with the offering of fire pans. You guys have your fire pans. Remember what happened with Aaron's sons when they brought the fire pans in an inappropriate offering? Didn't end well for them, right? And so they all arrange themselves there. Aaron and his sons on one side, Korach and his sons on the other side. Moses says, God's going to choose. Well, God chooses, and zappo, ground opens up. They all fall down. That's all she wrote, right? So that's how it ends. Slightly paraphrased, but that's that kind of idea, right? And now you see, by the way, I can tell you personally, having lived through, for example, the Brexit, when I was right before I moved here, right? It was a campaign for Brexit in the UK. And my comment to that would be, listen, you want to have an argument and a discussion on the merits of an issue, please, by all means. Please, by all means. And in fact, that's one of the things that the rabbis discuss. What was the issue between Korach and why was it such an evil thing? Because he was out for himself, right? That was not a discussion or an argument for the sake of heaven, for the sake of greater truth, for the sake of advancing and making other people better. It was about proving somebody else wrong and destroying them, right? That's why Korach is vilified. Whereas Hillel and Shammai in the Mishnah, they argue constantly with one another, but they did it They did it for the sake of the greater good. And so much so that it tells us that the sons of Hillel married the daughters of Shammai and vice versa, because even though they disagreed, they respected one another, right? Disagreement is not a vice. Disagreement is what pushes us forward to advance ourselves, right? To either have your mind open to a different perspective or to force you to better articulate your own position. Either way, arguing and discussing, when it's done with respect, when it's done for the right reasons, is a good thing. In this case, it was not. And so a whole country was, or a huge portion of a country in the UK was misled by the demagoguery of some of the politicians. Outright lies, attacks on immigrants, and so on and so forth, to the point where we ended up having a decision that was not done for the sake of heaven. Now, for me, I would have been less bothered if the campaign had been more truthful, if the campaign had been done with a discussion and arguments based on the facts, not an appeal to emotion, not an appeal to fear. And we didn't have that. And that more and more, I think it's up to us to be able to see those discussions, to see that demagoguery for what it is, in whatever realm we are in, whether it be politics, whether it be our communal life, whether it be in education, whatever the case may be. Those times, there's always a time, we are human beings, we thrive on that conflict. But we have to make sure the conflict is for the sake of heaven, for furthering ourselves, for that pursuit of that ultimate truth, not for manipulating and misleading people.
And at this time, we need the whistleblowers so urgently, but there's this concerted effort around the globe to discredit the whistleblowers,
yes,
who are the watchers and the gatekeepers for truth in so many situations. So I think it's a terrible indictment of the present devolution of democratic principles in what is being done on most continents to whistleblow.
I completely agree. And that's another form of manipulating, of removing the checks, removing that ability to have that open and fact-based, rational arguments with one another. And by the way, that's not just native to one political persuasion or another.
Oh no, as I said, on all continents.
The extremes on either side are well versed in this tactic.
Yes,
it would do us well to understand and to know how to have, for example, a logical argument, right? How to have a constructive argument with someone that doesn't rely on red herrings and straw man arguments and ad hominem attacks and things of that nature. That deals with the facts, right? I have many very, very, very good friends who I'm on very different ideological bents with them, but we know we respect one another and we can have those conversations with them that doesn't descend into emotional attacks on one another. Liz asked a question. Rafi, do you think when there is one demagogue, it gives license for more, as in modern politics? I think if the better the demagogue is, the more people will follow along and try and imitate, because they will see the results of, look, this person grabbed power, but they won't necessarily, they'll see the ends justify the means. And do I think it leads to more? I'm not sure. That I think I'd have to do a little bit more research to think about, does it cause more demagogues to give rise? I suppose when there's events and they pick their moments, these demagogues will pick their moments, because sometimes they're just not, when things are going well, demagogues are less able to grab the audience's attention, right? When Moses saves everybody's life and he intercedes directly with God, Korach is powerless. But it's when we allow our fears and our anger and our hatred to take root, then the demagogue rises, right? The people are angry. People are angry that Moses did not, or they're upset with what they've done, right? They followed along with the spies. They were allowed to be manipulated. So what did they do? They allow themselves to be further manipulated by somebody else.
Yeah, I think also someone just put a comment about Hitler. Like, people have safety in numbers in terms of if they think that an idea is getting traction, it's too scary to be the whistleblower to go against the main idea, basically. So therefore they will just be like, oh, I'm too scared to go against this. All right, I'll just get on board with, even though it's crazy, or even though I don't agree with it.
I think we have demagogues all over the place now on social media.
Yes.
I mean, it's like filled with information that's not, there's no critical thinking at the moment.
No.
So.
Exactly right. And that's partly what I'm trying to do with these classes, is to get you to see what the text actually says. Right? I'm not trying to give you much of an opinion. It's more of, look, you all think you know what the text actually says. Let's open the book and see what the text actually says.
That's the challenge and the joy of Torah study, isn't it?
Yes.
That, you can get in some really essential cognitive training.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I think part of that, it's the mental skills are crucial. I really think as a society, we are losing the ability of how to argue respectfully and properly with one another.
Yes.
And too often it just devolves into a shouting match, and too often it devolves into, well, I'm not really listening to you because I'm waiting. I already know what I want to say.
Yes.
I'm not hearing you, right? I'm not hearing you. And that's exemplified by Datan and Aviram, where Moses says, come, okay, let's discuss. And they said, nope, we're not going to come and talk with you. Well, then what are you actually arguing for? You're not actually arguing.
Yes.
Right?
So modern, as ever.
Exactly right.
But I'm like curious then, in Judaism, like, you know, certain parts of Judaism is not very good at listening to the other. I mean, is in other religions or other belief systems that may not necessarily agree with.
Well, I think,
for example, in the Hindu tradition, I mean, the Judaism does a very bad job at talking about idolatry and making people who follow, who use icons to worship. And I always find that Judaism has a little bit of a negative.
Well, Judaism does, but on the other hand, I think sometimes they're absolutely right in that. I mean, well, we're finished with the class now. I can keep going, but I was actually thinking about this. Someone showed me a piece that, this whole thing about taking down statues now, because you're going to look and you're going to find in any place, there are people who they're human beings. They're not perfect, right? I want to be clear. There are definitely some. I have as an American, I have absolutely no qualms whatsoever taking down any quote unquote heroes of the Civil War, because the Civil War was, of those who are ignorant of history, the Confederacy was absolutely and totally blatantly created to preserve and spread slavery. That's what it was for. And it's right there in the Declaration of Independence of the Constitution, of the Confederacy. That's what they were fighting for, to create and perpetuate a racist, white supremacist state that perpetuated slavery. That's what it was. And it was insurrection and committing treason against the United States. So taking down those statues I have absolutely no problem with that. The problem then is taking down any kind of statues. And I was thinking about this, and someone pointed out, Judaism doesn't really have so much a problem with this, because we don't put up statues full stop. We don't venerate the person, we venerate the things they did, perhaps. And it's a difference of not having to worry about taking down a statue, because we look at the person as in their totality, but not the physical image of the person. We understand that people aren't perfect. But it's a thought that I've been playing with, maybe a little bit of a longer idea of what to talk about. In that case, any other questions about what I was talking about? Meira, you're absolutely welcome. Anytime. We're here every week at the same time. And if there's a particular topic that you'd like to cover, I will happily cover that. But yeah, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening, everybody. We'll see you all next week. Same bat channel, same bat time.
Just tell us quickly why we have the joy of the photograph of you in your navel.
I was having I was doing my Hebrew class on Monday with John Green, and him and I have been putting up different pictures of each other from our previous lives. So there's this one.
Yes.
I have this one of me from that's me also in 2005.
In disguise.
That's me. I promise you, that's me. So
not looking sinister, but definitely.
I'm doing. I was a chaplain in the Navy, and
yes,
I was visiting a Coast Guard base, and was counseling someone, and he had to go on a border patrol flight, and he said, well, he was not done, and he said, "Can we keep chatting?" I said, "Yeah, we'll talk when you get back." And he says, "Why don't you just come on the flight with me?" I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So we're having a conversation about deep personal stuff, overflying the border with Mexico, in our headsets. It was
That's terrific. Yeah, great.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I will see you all very, very soon.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.